What's going on, everyone? Welcome to today's pandemic update video for Friday, February 24th, 2023. I am Data Report for datareport.info. We do have a few news items to get to before we talk about today's data. First off, Keith Rarley, who is the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, has tested positive for COVID yet again. I say yet again because this is his fourth time with COVID. This time it was on Thursday, February 23rd, in the morning that he tested positive. He is 73 years old. And then there was this that I found today. Wastewater sampled from 88 flights arriving in JFK International Airport from August 1st through September 9th showed, and this was of last year's, of 2022, showed that 65 out of the 88 flights had COVID on the flight. So that means out of the 88 flights, 65 of them had COVID positive cases, and COVID was present on those flights. That should be alarming. That should be a headline on the news. That should be telling people, hey, we need to mask again on flights to help reduce the spread of COVID. But here we are. We were told, oh, it's generally safe to fly. Masks were removed, and, well, here you go. There's a lot of flights. 65 out of 88. That's quite a few. Then there was this. Former Senator Jim Inhofer, I think I'm pronouncing that right. If not, apologies. He's a Republican out of Oklahoma. Long COVID attributed to his decision to retire. So he decided to retire after he said, oh, my case of COVID was mild. Well, he then later on admitted he has long COVID, and he was still having symptoms from day to day. He also admitted that there were multiple others. Read this. Chief of Staff Luke Holland announced the senator had a very mild case of the virus almost exactly 1 year ago, the same day he announced he would be retiring. He also noted that it would have been from Omicron, and that there were a few other senators that were not willing to admit they do have long COVID. So that is relatively interesting. Then we have this. Let's get to the data now, and that's the wastewater sampling. So some good news and some bad news. The good news is some areas have dropped. The bad news, some areas have risen again. First off, let's take a look at the West Coast. As you can see on the West Coast, it's generally low to a few areas with moderate and high transmission. You still have the high transmission in Utah, and up in the Pacific Northwest, you have generally moderate transmission. A lot of wastewater sites have not reported in that area. Coming over to the Great Lakes, you still have a mixture of low to even moderate transmission. There's a lot of wastewater sites that did not report in Michigan, and there's even a few high transmission sites mixed in. This is definitely the area where COVID is most prevalent in the country right now. North Carolina, South Carolina, moderate transmission. I would say there's more high transmission than moderate in South Carolina. Coming up to the Northeast, looking into Pennsylvania, remember we had a couple high sites in Southeast Pennsylvania? They, for the most part, have transitioned to low transmission. We still have moderate transmission being found in Delaware. New York City is at low transmission. That's good news. Western New York State is still at high transmission. And take a look at this. Central New York State, moderate and high transmission. So that's something we'll have to watch. As you know, that's a classic area for popping a new variant. Moving on up to Maine, it's generally moderate transmission with even a couple areas of high transmission. And as you head into northeast or down east Maine, it's generally low transmission. Vermont this week is at moderate transmission. Taking a look at the CDC transmission map, there is some good news on this. Overall transmission in the east is dropping, and it's not so much high anymore. There's more substantial areas than there were the previous week. In fact, high transmission now represents 1,764 counties, and that's down by 3.54%. Substantial represents 777 counties. That's up by 1.99%. Moderate represents 502 counties, and low represents 179 counties. All right, we did get this week's variant proportion update. 85% of all cases in the country are XBB.1.5. BQ.1.1 is 9.4% of the cases. BQ.1 is 2.6% of the cases, and XBB is 1.2% of the cases. CH1.1 is 0.9, BN.1 is 0.4, and then you still have BA.5 and BF.7 around at 0.1%. Taking a look at today's Walgreens update. The national positivity is 31.5%. The prior week was 32.8%. That's a difference of down 1.3%. 20,993 tests were conducted this week. Last week, 23,089 were conducted. As you can see here, there are some more green areas where the positivity is dropping, but we do have some red ones to discuss. Let's start off with New England. New England, Maine is now up 5.6%, 36% this week, 30.4% last week. Vermont is now up 6% again. We were saying this would happen because they had that big ski weekend, President's Day weekend, 44.4% this week, 38.5% last week. And you come down here to New York State, where the positivity is dropping. 36.4% this week, 40.1% last week, and a difference of down 3.7%. And you will see in the New York State dashboard, which we will get to next after Walgreens, New York State is in fact dropping on the state dashboard as well. Let's take a look at Delaware. Delaware, we saw moderate transmission on the CDC map and on the wastewater map. Well, their cases or their positivity is rising. Current week 37%, prior week 32.4%. That's a difference of 4.6%. 100 tests this week, 105 last week. How about Kentucky? Kentucky's at 24.9% this week, 34.5% last week, down 9.6%. Then you come down here to Arkansas. We've been watching Arkansas go up. They're at 38.7% this week, 18.5% last week. Difference of up 20.2%. Then you come up here to Montana. Montana's been rising as well. 26.1% this week, 9.7% last week. Difference of up 16.4%. We also have a significant rise in Iowa, where it's 33.3% this week, 26% last week. Difference of up 7.3% and more tests conducted than last week. 135 this week, 127 last week. And we will end on Colorado. Colorado is at 33.9% this week, 29.2% last week. That is up by 4.2 or 4.7%. Now, moving on to New York State. New York State, 1,737 new positive cases. The test positivity is 3.4% today. That is lower than the 7-day average of 3.9%, and the 7-day average is lower than being over 4%, which it was yesterday. Also, we are continuing to see the hospitalizations drop, but they're not dropping really all that fast. I mean, they are dropping, but it's not like it's straight down. It's just a slow drop. 1,945 people are in the hospital, and 217 people are in the ICU. Now you come to deaths this week. Yesterday, another 1,812 deaths were added. That is lower than that previous day of last week, where 2,000 were added. So far this week, 2,427 deaths were added, and at this rate, we are going to be lower than last week's 2,869 deaths. Despite deaths dropping, we are still at unacceptable high levels of deaths, and it's going to take a lot more coming down. They're going to need to come down way, way more in order for it to be more a tolerable amount. But you know what? No one should have to die of COVID. And remember, this is a complete undercount. It's not factoring in many other factors: deaths at home, deaths that get miscategorized, or deaths of long COVID. So, yes, we're well on track for at least another 150,000 deaths of COVID this year, if not more. Probably, maybe even closer to 200,000. All right, taking a look at some international data. Let me refresh this so we get the most up-to-date data. And Japan's cases are down 32%. Deaths are down 34%. Taiwan's down 15%. Deaths down 8%. Germany cases are up 11%. Cases down 8%. Russia cases are up 12%. Deaths are up 3%. South Korea is down 15%. Brazil is down 27%, but 108% increase in deaths. That's not good. They're probably coming off of a wave, but at the same time, they're likely not testing enough. Taking a look at Italy, Italy is up 4%, down 18% on deaths. France is up 17%, down 2% on deaths. Their deaths will probably start rising soon. Mexico cases are rising yet again, up 27%. So they're seeing another increase in cases. And their deaths are up 25%. I have not seen any info as to why Mexico is rising. Poland is up 49% on cases, down 2% on deaths. Belgium is up 28% on cases and up 15% on deaths. Alrighty, last thing for today. Let's take a look at the latest flu numbers. And I do have some good news for you. Mexico, still at high levels. Moderate levels in California. The rest of the Northwest are at low levels. And look at the southeastern states. Aside from Florida, which is almost getting ready to go to moderate, it's all low transmission. Texas is at moderate levels. High levels continue in D.C., and high levels continue in New York City, but they are almost ready to drop down to moderate levels. The rest of the Northeast is at minimal to low levels, and you also do have moderate levels in New Jersey now. And remember, New Jersey is right next to New York City, so you get a high traffic of cases that get spread back and forth between the two states, and you have low transmission in North Dakota, and the rest of the Dakotas and the Plains is in minimal transmission at this time. Alright, that's all I have for today's pandemic update video. If you find the content that you see on my channel informative to you or educated, or maybe it keeps you safe from the viruses, give us a thumbs up down below and hit the subscribe button so you will know when I do new content on the channel. Thanks for watching and stay safe, everyone.